What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video. Hope you guys are doing well today. It is a beautiful day, and I hope you guys are doing well. If you haven't already, please take a second, hit the like button for your boy, and also consider subscribing to the channel. Well, guys, I am really happy to make this video today. I've been on this earth for over 40 years, and I could just go ahead and tell you that I didn't learn a thing or two. All right, I've tried some stuff, and I'm willing to admit that I've tried more things that didn't work than actually have worked, right? And so these are some lessons that I feel like if you're over 40 will be unbelievably beneficial and valuable to you. Some of these are some things that you have to, if you haven't learned this lesson yet, I'm happy to share this with you. If you're in your 20s or your 30s, you have a tremendous advantage. And so I hope that anyone who's in their 20s or 30s, definitely hit me up in the comments. Just, matter of fact, everybody, just put your age in the comments. I'm curious to see who YouTube decides to share this video with, because I think this is going to be incredibly valuable for you. Now, me personally, I grew up, with a particular group of people who I no longer, for the most part, hang out with. I had a lot of friends, or at least the first lesson I'm going to share with you guys is I had a lot of people who I thought were friends when I was younger that I later realized they were more like acquaintances and not friends. So I will go ahead and say that probably the first lesson I learned was recognizing the difference between acquaintances, co-workers, and actual friends. So there's a huge difference between each of those categories. Now, some people can actually be in multiple categories, but the friend category is the highest level. And I really highly encourage you guys to recognize who's really a friend of yours and who just doesn't qualify to be in that high level of a category. The next lesson that I've learned probably in my 30s. I probably learned this probably in my mid 30s, but definitely once I hit my 40s. And it's like a muscle that you work over time and it gets stronger, right? And this is the need for validation from people. Like, it's funny. I have conversations with my amazing wife all the time because we're like so on the same page when it comes to so many things. And I'm incredibly lucky to have her, by my side, because to find someone who's so compatible to you is just ridiculous. Now, we weren't always this compatible, but it's like over time, as the two of us have been able to communicate, improve on our communications, and learn more about each other and learn about life and God, we realized what was really important to us. And one thing I realized that was holding us back tremendously is, and it holds some people back more than others, but it's the need for validation. Now, I would say probably in my mid-30s, I became very aware that the validation or approval of your peers and even people that you don't necessarily know would impact, or at least it would impact my decisions. For example, I wanted to start a YouTube channel long ago, but I'm worried about what people are going to think. I'm worried about who might see my video. What are they going to think about it? What are they going to think about every little thing I say? Who might be offended by what I say? Who might think I'm talking about them? All these like ancillary things that really don't matter. Number one, most people will never even watch your stuff. Number one, when it comes to YouTube, most people are never even going to watch your video. They'll never even stumble across your channel. Number two, a real friend actually knows the real you. So if they get ticked off or offended by something that you said, maybe they're not who you thought they were. Validation, though, is a big one, because a lot of people have ambitions and dreams, but they allow the concern as to whether or not certain people that they know, or even people that they don't know, may look at them a certain way, approve or disapprove, or what if they see me fail? Dude, I have gotten to the point where I literally push, like, and I mentioned how it's like a muscle that you work. I used to literally whenever I would feel some kind of discomfort, I would push myself to go ahead and do it. Whatever it was, right? You know, assuming it wasn't like life-threatening. Like, I'm probably not going to parachute off of a mountain or anything like that. But, you know, when it came to social experiments or social acceptance, I would literally push myself to do the thing that was uncomfortable, because the more you do the uncomfortable, the less uncomfortable feels. So I literally trained myself to be comfortable being uncomfortable, and that is the fastest way to get growth. Muscles don't grow when you don't use them. You have to make them uncomfortable, let them rest and recover and rebuild, and they build back stronger. And the same thing happens with this mental exercise, which is simply no longer allowing yourself to be handicapped, or I should say handcuffed by the need for approval from anyone else. I could give a good goddamn what anybody thinks about what I'm about to do. And this is probably maybe lesson 2.5 here. Don't tell people what you're doing. When you tell people ahead of time what you're doing, number one, you've already telegraphed the pass. I used to play basketball. I used to be a huge... Anyway, you don't want to telegraph the pass in football, basketball, soccer. You don't want to let your opponent, or even if they're not your opponent, if they have nothing, if you're telling people who have nothing to do with what you're working on, in other words, if you have a business partner, you probably need to let them know what you're planning to do with the business that you guys are both in, right? But aside from that, if you're not married, you don't really need to tell nobody nothing. And if you have an unsupportive spouse, maybe your spouse doesn't need to know yet. Because sometimes you need to make your decisions and start getting traction before you start letting people know what your next move is, because you'd be surprised how many undercover haters you got that don't want to see you win, who are afraid to see you do the thing you think you can do, and they will talk you out of it one way or another. Or maybe they have the best intentions for you, but they failed at something similar, and they placed their own limiting beliefs on you. And because they couldn't do it, they feel like you can't do it. So just to avoid all of that, keep your mouth shut, work in silence, let your success and progress inform those onlookers who are curious about what you're doing. That's the best way to go, guys. I promise you that. That's one of the things I tell people, new content creators, you know, my students who are growing their YouTube channels. The first thing I teach my students is never tell anybody you started a channel. That's step one for death. If you want to like not succeed, tell people everything you're planning on doing. So straight up, guys, skip that part. The next thing I want to share with you guys, I guess this is like lesson either 3.5 or 3. I don't even know what number we're up to. Somebody comment down below what number am I on. So anyway, I would say that the enemy of good, or the enemy of progress, or actually doing anything, is perfection. And I say that because most people, whenever they embark upon anything new, they feel the need that it has to be perfect. And so, you know, whether it's starting a business or, you know, trying to improve your fitness, your diet, your health, whatever the case may be, there's just so much self-criticism, so much self-judgment. And folks will oftentimes let the desire for perfection prevent them from making any kind of progress toward whatever their goals are. And I want to give you permission to say you ain't got to be perfect. Nobody's perfect. If you're hanging out on Instagram and social media like that, you know, and I think Instagram is just really, really bad about this, because Instagram is literally, most people that have really big Instagram followings, they will only post pictures, highly edited videos, highly edited photos of their perfect life, right? Or at least what they want to project as being perfect. And I think that this really harms people, because if you're spending a lot of time on social media, Instagram, whatever, and you're seeing nothing but perceived perfection, this can give one of the worst illusions about what's really going on in other people's lives who you may be following. And this can influence you to think that if you're not doing things on their level, then you shouldn't even bother. And I want to give you permission to understand that you don't need to compete with anybody else. The only person you should ever be competing with is the you that you used to be. So the you of yesterday, the you of last week, or the you of last year. Everyone starts life at a different point, right? Everyone's got their own genetic advantages. Everyone's got their own family advantages. Some people come from wealthy families. Some people come from very poor families. Some people are born with a handicap. Some people are born with, like some people just, everyone, it's kind of like a video game. If you've ever played like, Call of Duty or Fortnite, it's like when you start the game, you spawn into the game in different places. And not everyone's going to spawn into the most ideal locations. And it's just like life. But it's not about where you spawn, it's about where you finish. So I can spawn in one of the worst places on a Call of Duty map and end up cooking everybody out there and coming in first place. And, the same thing can happen in life. You can start off poor in disadvantaged situations and end up winning at life. And oftentimes that's the case because, and I tell you what, it's pain that causes people to take action. Usually, think about it. And I don't know how many of you guys are aware of this, but usually when you're comfortable, that's one of the worst circumstances to be in to be able to achieve astronomical growth. If you're comfortable, if you're able to just, you're able to get by, nothing, you're not in a circumstance that you hate, then you're not likely to be nearly as motivated as someone who hates their circumstances. Me, when I was living paycheck to paycheck, barely able to spend any time with my family, that was uncomfortable for me. It was painful. There were things I wanted to do. I was highly ambitious. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know how to do them. I didn't have the financial resources to do them. And so that pain and, that lack of ability to spend time with my family was painful for me. And it was a daily reminder. So because of that pain, I was highly motivated to figure out, how do I construct the life that I want to live? Because what I was living wasn't living. It was whack. It sucked. And so, but the thing is if I was comfortable, where would my motivation for change come from? So if you're in a situation that you're not happy with, I want you to try and see this as a blessing, because you can improve your life. And I work with all sorts of people, and just to see the transformation that people are able to go through, going from paycheck to paycheck to making money online, remotely, from desirable places on earth, to be able to teach people that an alternative way of living is possible is just so rewarding for me. And again, if you didn't have the discomfort, you probably wouldn't seek a better way of life. That's all I'm saying. So I find that incredibly valuable, although it does suck in the interim. A wise man once said, what doesn't work for you is typically working on you until it does work for you. So for example, when people are starting their businesses, oftentimes businesses don't work right out the gate. But just because it's not working out the gate doesn't mean it won't work eventually. And so as I'm coaching my students, I'm like, you got to understand, obviously if you have a coach, you have a mentor, they can kind of help you accelerate and speed up the process. But when you don't have that, this is some good general advice, I feel. When you don't when you're working on building a business, understand that what's not yet working for you is working on you. And so as it's working on you, your job is to figure out what type of person do I need to become in order for this business to start working for me. And I know that this is a high level kind of conversation that I'm having right now, but all businesses can work, assuming like you're not in some dying industry. Like, don't go out there starting some newspaper company right now. Don't start a Polaroid camera company. But, you know, assuming that there is a market for the product or service that you're selling, there are ways of making the business work. Now, if you guys appreciate the content, the conversation, definitely hit the like button, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll see you guys on the next one.